So welcome back, everyone, to our new episode of The Quad. With me here, my co-host, Vivian Berkovich, former ambassador of Canada to Israel, prominent lawyer, and Emily here to my left, Emily Schrader, human rights activist and journalist. And today, unfortunately, our wonderful Ashira Solomon got the flu. And so she's home recovering, but hopefully she'll be with us very, very soon. And many of you have written such beautiful feedback on our show, and there's so many people who watch our show these days, that we urge you all, please like, subscribe, and click on the bell. That's what I've been told to say. Click on the bell. But this show really is, we're very proud that it resonates with so many people, the unique voices of a diverse group of women here in Israel. And here we are again, ladies, another week that our hostages are not home. And there's talk in the town, talk here in Israel, about the unity that happened post-October 7th, because we certainly didn't have any unity pre-October 7th. And we ask ourselves, those of us who are proudly moderates in the middle, that talk to people that don't agree with us, how is it that we can keep the spirit of unity the day after the war? When is the day after of the war? And what society is going to look like? Is it going to change? And we do see unity all around us. And where I see the most beautiful unity is in the field of war, where soldiers from different backgrounds, from all around the country, from different religious backgrounds, political backgrounds, you know, the enemy's not asking who you voted for or what side you were on the reform debate. Right. And these soldiers are basically saying to us, we can do this, we just need the country behind us and united. So how do we solve this kind of conundrum the day after, Vivian?
So the million-dollar question, except that I agree and disagree with what you've just introduced. I agree that the IDF, also called the People's Army, is very much a people's army. It is a real representation of the country, of the civilians. Everyone participates, and you can be a CEO or you can be a hospital cleaner. Once you're in uniform and on the field, all of that disappears. It's irrelevant. And they've fought bravely and very, very effectively. So that element and aspect of unity is there. What's not there is all the rest.
What's all the rest?
Well, so all the rest. So, you know, right away, it took Prime Minister Netanyahu, I believe it was 3 days after the massacre, to come and speak to the public. And he came out and said, you know, his usual kind of canned speech, you know, hey, Israeli citizens, you know, we're gonna do this, we're gonna beat them, we're gonna destroy Hamas, which we're not, and, you know, all the usual points. And we're gonna be unified because we have to be unified because we have to beat the enemy. That was the kind of boilerplate. Well, you can't airbrush away the incredibly deep fissures that plagued the society and were so apparent on October 6th. They don't disappear.
Even when you have a common enemy? Because that's what unites people.
Well, do we though?
Hamas is not a common enemy?
Well, to a degree, yes. But you and I, all three of us, we know that the sitting government, constituted primarily of Ben Gvir, Smotrich, Bibi,
those that go along with them.
And those that go along with them. Took them 5 days to agree to a war cabinet to oversee this colossal disaster where the IDF was completely absent. 5 days, and we know why. Because Bibi was being pressured by Ben Gvir to give in to conditions that were ridiculous. 5 days after the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, we have seen constant politicking. We have seen what I would say is a much less than desired focus on the release of the hostages as a priority.
Agree.
Benjamin Netanyahu.
I think it's changed, though. I think that
I think it's gotten worse.
I think that at the beginning of the war, this is the way I see it, it wasn't a priority, and I think that the incredible campaign of the families of the hostages, along with the whole country seeing those hostages as their own children, has shifted, because even the language changed. Emily, do you agree with Vivian's less than optimistic outlook on our prospects of unity?
I mean, I'm hopeful that it will be different, but I'm not planning on it. I agree pretty much with everything you said, and I also think it's getting worse. I mean, just before this episode, I saw that Ben Gvir was tweeting about how we need to put settlements in Gaza. Like, and Smotrich has been saying things like this since day one. It's a competition between
both of them to see who can get there first.
They're trying to make political moves out of a very unpleasant, difficult situation. And I don't think anybody that I've spoken to militarily, which is actually quite a bit of people, are even planning on anything even remotely close to that. What we're maybe talking about doing the day after in Gaza, maybe, is working with some of the major clans in the Gaza Strip to establish governance, perhaps even with some joint cooperation between the Palestinian Authority and even other Arab states, which I think would be the best case scenario, because this isn't about land. No. And so many people on the anti-Israel side are speaking about, oh, Israel's trying to steal land. We don't want Gaza. We don't want to be in Gaza. We want nothing to do with Gaza.
We left for a reason.
Exactly. The only people who want Gaza are maybe Smotrich, and you know what? He can go there if he wants. Him and Ben Gvir.
No Arab country wants Gaza either.
Yeah.
Nobody, including Egypt, that borders with Gaza. Nobody wants Gaza. But let me throw something back at both of you.
I want to add one more thing.
Yes.
I do want to add one more thing. I think that the surprise unity that I've seen, that I perhaps didn't expect after what happened in 2021, is that the Arab sector is much more supportive of Israel, much more identifying as Israelis. They're proud to be Israeli. They're proud to be on the front lines. This goes for Christians, for Druze, for Muslims, Bedouins specifically. Of course, they were also victims of, some of them were hostages.
They were also slaughtered.
Yes, of course, and some of them gave their lives trying to save people as well.
And some of them saved lots of different people.
So this is something that I was very pleasantly surprised by, and until now it's continued pretty much.
I agree.
So I hope that continues, because I do think that the Arab sector is an important part of Israel's identity, and we should embrace it more. That's the only way to move forward together.
It's 20%, and I think for the most part they're happy to be here, and we're happy to have them, and it makes our society better. Stronger. Now, we're talking about this politicking and the divisions before. What do you both think about Bibi's move this week to appoint Aaron Barak, who over the last year and a half was apparently the person to blame for the reform, for the need to reform, and
he was
now
the death and enemy of Israel.
Being appointed the ad hoc judge, for those of you who don't know, in the ICC in Hague, the criminal court tribunal that Israel has to defend itself from a bogus South African claim. South Africa, as Emily, you very eloquently said on your piece last week, I learned a lot from that, leading raping country of the world.
Mm-hmm. And murder.
And murder.
Don't forget murder.
So South Africa has now put a claim against Israel, and Israel doesn't have a permanent judge in that court, but they can appoint an ad hoc judge. And surprise, surprise, I think in a brilliant move, Bibi appoints Aaron Barak, who is kind of the chief of judicial activism, which over the last year, the right-wing government has been trying to kind of counterbalance. And now he's appointed, and the right wing don't know what to do with this. And I think it's a brilliant move, because if we're looking at the positive side of it, it basically signals to the world we may be divided internally, but when we have to fight a common enemy, we stand together. I'm sure that you both will have a more cynical take on my...
Or realistic.
Go on.
Yeah.
Go on.
So, I mean, first of all, the right wing definitely knows how to react to it, because they have been reacting to it.
Right.
And they've been like, just why are we putting this man who they have demonized as being the root of all evil in Israel for years, unfairly and baselessly. An 87-year-old man,
Holocaust
survivor. You don't have to agree with everything and all his jurisprudence and his positions, and I don't.
Right.
But he is a really, really big man in this field. So that's their hypocrisy, and Bibi's hypocrisy. Bibi has no principles. Bibi will do whatever he needs to keep juggling the balls, and he needs Barak. And that's exactly what he said. I was reading this morning in the media. We need them. We need to put the best case forward. Doesn't mean anything in terms of our approach or the way in which we govern.
But he's then not politicizing this if he's picked the best person to help Israel's case.
Yeah, but I mean, everything he does, love him or hate him, everything that man does is to position himself politically, and we've seen it for decades, even whether you like him or not.
But he's gotten a lot of flack from his own...
He is an incredible politician.
Sure, but he's gotten
one of the best in the world.
But he's gotten a lot of flack for this from his own right wing.
Yeah, but he schmack. He can take the flack.
I think we see once again that this government is positioning itself as prioritizing politics, you know, each of them individually, even in this tragedy, which is why I think that they are primarily responsible. I mean, obviously not for carrying out the attacks, but their lack of leadership, their intentional division plays a huge role in what led up to this attack. And I think all of them need to resign. I think what's happened in this, it's pitiful.
Well, the military leaders will probably resign because I think they have integrity, and they've already said it.
They said it on day one. And Netanyahu spent 3 months pointing fingers at everybody else and basically saying, I have no responsibility. Apropos, I just wanted to go back to your comment about the hostages and how they've sort of, you know, because of the impact of the hostage families, that they've kind of changed their tune. They've been dragged kicking and screaming to do anything. They said nothing for the first 2 weeks.
That's true.
And Benjamin Netanyahu, they've all been placing their editorials in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. Benjamin Netanyahu, I believe it was last week, had an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, silent on the hostages. You know why?
Because he can't deliver?
Well, 2 things. Because he can't deliver, but also none of his constituents have people who are at that music festival
I think
and
that's
living on. No.
I think that's a very cynical way to look at it.
I think Benjamin Netanyahu is very cynical.
But no, but you're talking about the people who support him. So I'm gonna push back, because a lot of the people who vote for Likud, maybe who voted for Likud, are people who are severely traumatized and damaged by all of this. You can't say there was more right-wing or left-wing people at that festival. I think that is complete fallacy to say that. Everybody's affected. People have lost their children. I saw a mother on TV the other night just saying she didn't want to politicize this. She lost her son. She's got another 4 fighting. And she just said, you know, just take the wheel. She didn't politicize this, and this would have been, to me, a classic Likud voter. And I think it's not fair for you to say that the Likud voters are not affected by this war in the same way. I think it's very unfair.
I just want to be very careful. I think what I'm saying is the people around the table representing Likud are of the view that it does not impact their constituents in a significant way.
That's a very not. They're all fighting.
I'm not sure.
Everybody's
I think
there's no difference. I agree. It's not about constituents.
I think the individual, some of the leaders that we see now, I agree with you completely. I mean, the comments from Miri Regev, from Amsalam, they're awful. But I'm not sure I would say it represents the constituents of Likud, or even that that's what their priority is. Because the way that a lot of, not just Likud, but a lot of the parties in Israel, like the internal primaries, if they even have primaries, are so, I mean, there's so many political internal games you have to do to get on the list.
It's not about principle.
They're not even concerned. This is a problem in Israel, I think. The elected officials are not even concerned about constituents, period. It's not specific to Likud. It's the way the system works. They're concerned about somebody who's mid-level on the central committee that's going to get them to number 8 on the Likud list. And it's the same for all the parties,
you know
unfortunately.
what?
It's awful.
I hope you're right.
None of the parties have primaries, let's be honest, except for maybe Labour, Meretz. Yair Lapid doesn't. Benny Gantz certainly doesn't.
Well, Lapid started.
And I think that the Likud, as somebody who has got the scars from a Likud primary, I can tell you that it's not about what you believe or your ideology that gets you up or down the list. That's very, very clear.
It's all internal.
It's all games and players and people who've been there. And for somebody like me, who's an immigrant and a woman, the whole thing's even harder. But put that aside. Let's go back to maybe perhaps a positive thought before we go on to our next segment about potential ways forward for unity. What is it that we could be doing now to ensure that the next stage, or when we come out of Gaza, when we solve the problem in Gaza, if that's possible, and please God it is, how do we as a society, this is the same society that is basically holding the country together right now, how do we continue to be united in spite of the leadership and not because of the leadership?
Everyone's looking at me.
Debbie Downer, come on.
No, I'm just, a hard realist at the table. And I just want to say, I hope you guys are right about the perceptions of the people around the table with respect to who attended Nova and how it affects their constituents that they don't care about, but also who lives in the OTEF. But we'll leave that for another day, the area around Gaza, because the people who live in the area around Gaza certainly are not supporters of this government.
That's right.
And that shows.
But the kids, everybody's kids fighting in the war, you can't make a distinction.
But we're talking about unity, and that's the disunity and the politicization is so deeply ingrained into every pore and in the DNA of this government. So how do we preserve whatever unity we think we may have? And I think at the civil society level, we have a lot.
Yes.
I also think that it's very fraught and very fragile. And I think that we as a society have to find a way to do two things that are critical that have not been done. And this, of course, is on the assumption that Bibi has the dignity to resign in the very near future.
Or just hold an election.
Sure, that'll do it.
Yeah.
Yep. So the two things, I absolutely agree with Emily when she talks about there has been a seismic shift in the Arab-Israeli population. I've spoken to so many people, some friends, some people I've just met over the last few months, who really understand the value of being an Israeli. They are horrified by the Hamas culture, by the savagery that we've seen, and I've heard it over and over and over. You have to, basically, you Israelis, you Jewish Israelis, you have to integrate us.
Get it together.
You have to
this relationship.
include us. We have to be brought together, and I agree. And so that's one way.
Yeah.
And the other way is that this whole society has to find a way to manage the Haredi entitlements that cannot be sustained economically or in terms of service. And it's got to stop like yesterday.
By the way, I think a possible idea for the day after the war in general, not just the conflict in Gaza, national service for both groups,
right?
For Haredim and also for Arabs. They can work in their communities. They can work in hospitals.
They don't have to leave their communities. Just give a year of your life to your community in your country.
Because it's like saying you are a part of our nation.
Yes.
We want you here. It's not just that we want people to serve the country. We want them to be a part of our society.
And it's part
both groups.
And you live in a country and yet there's a deal. And if you're there, you have to either buy into the deal or you can leave. And as I often say, I agree totally on the Sherut Lumi. It's so obvious. I think many of us have been advocating that for years.
And I think there was
like roads, bridges, and airports and hospitals?
Yeah.
You got to contribute.
Old age homes. There's so many things that they could do within their own community if the problem is breaking down the walls. And I get that, this religious maximalism and all that. But you can stay in your own community.
Yes.
You can work in your own community. I've got to say, in Jerusalem, we have, but not Sherut, we have a national service for Arab girls, Arab women, young women. And every year...
It's exploding.
And every year,
rate of enlistment?
The demand is higher. Every single year. And I go and plead the National Service Institute, the National Service Directorate here, to open more and more places for Arab women. And where are they doing their service? They're kindergarten assistants, they're school assistants for special needs kids. They're doing fantastic work, and then they get their grant at the end of it. And that really helps them set them up for life and also give them a profession. And it's been growing, and the demand. So just a little bit of, optimism that in Jerusalem, where the situation with the Arabs is much less simple than with the Arab Israelis because of the different status and because of course, the brainwashing they get through their educational system, which we're trying to deal with. This is a phenomenon that's growing and that we are helping push forward as a city. So
that's fantastic.
I think that shows that it's possible.
North, it's been increasing a lot. There are a lot of people
North is a whole
who
different...
just investing, who joined the army, the Arab recruits are up. It's crazy.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yes, I think they feel, more part of society than ever before.
Yep.
And I think this is the moment to capitalize on that feeling of unity. And also with the Haredi feeling of unity, that's also increased, by the way. There was a survey recently, and there's 30% more people who say they would serve their country in some way. Let's capitalize on this moment of unity.
Can we get them down to pick fruit in the meantime?
Well, I tried. There are a couple of yeshivas that I spoke to that are going down to pick fruit.
Right.
And I said to them, you could learn half a day and pick fruit half a day. You can start in the morning.
Or you could pick fruit all day and then learn
in the
after
evening.
your work day.
Absolutely.
Just like everybody else.
A few yeshivot did follow that call, and we have to work on it a little bit harder. But ultimately, just from an economic perspective, everybody has to understand that, as Stanley Fischer, who used to be the governor of the Bank of Israel, a very brilliant man, economist, said, when something is not sustainable, at some point it has to stop. And putting all the religious disagreements we may have to one side, the country cannot afford for a 20% population, eventually it's going to be 20, 30%, at the moment it's 15% population of Haredim in the country, growing population, for half the men, or more than half the men, not working. The country can't afford it, so eventually we're going to have to find...
Neither can my
and
paycheck.
Make a few social contract. We're going to have to figure out a new social contract with the Haredim, and then maybe after the war
Absolutely.
is a moment to kind of recalibrate. And maybe we need a little bit more upheaval, and then we're going to figure out how we move forward in the next 50 years. So on that more positive note, we move on to our interview this week. And now we're very privileged to have in our studios a special guest, Jessica Elter, who the night of the Nova Festival, the 6th of October, that turned into the terrible massacre of the 7th of October, was actually meant to have gone with her boyfriend to that festival. And for reasons that she will explain to us, she didn't go, but unfortunately lost her boyfriend in that terrible, terrible massacre. So Jessica, thank you for being here with us in the quad.
Thank you for inviting me.
How can you even start to explain to us even the decision, because this was your partner, you did everything together, not to go that night to the festival?
Well, that was a very unusual decision not to go to that party that I don't understand until today, until those days. I'm still trying to understand why I stayed at home that night. And I decided...
you would have gone? You've been to concerts together?
Always,
right.
always. We're doing everything together. If you're drinking a cup of water, I'm doing it with you. Me and Ben were like this. And on this Friday, I decided on the last moments before Shabbat to keep Shabbat.
You'd never kept Shabbat?
Maybe once.
Wow.
This was a decision that I don't even know how to process.
Did you just have a gut instinct, or?
Something from inside just told me, you need to keep this Shabbat. I had no explanation. Ben had the same reaction when I told him, Ben, I'm not going with you. I'm staying home to keep Shabbat. And he looked at me and said, what?
Who are you?
Yeah. Okay. And then he came 5 minutes later, why aren't you getting dressed? And I said, I told you I'm keeping Shabbat. It was weird at the time, and it's weird today as well, because it has no explanation. I just decided probably something from inside that felt, if I knew so, I would leave Ben with me at home and would never let him go. But the only thing I knew is what I felt in my guts, and that's what made me to decide and to stay home eventually, and that what saved me.
Now, Ben is a hero. I mean, what he did was truly heroic. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened? I know it's very difficult to speak about, but I think that our viewers should hear his story and truly what an incredible hero he was on that day.
Ben was a superhero. And the reason that I'm telling his story is because I think the whole world needs to know this story. This is not a regular story. We have many, many, many heroes in this war, and always. But Ben's story is quite different because he was at the party. He went to hear music, to have fun. And when the massacre and everything started, he decided to save people. Like, everybody ran all over. Everybody ran to their houses. But Ben did the opposite thing from our instinct as humans, to run home and to save ourselves. And he decided to go inside the fire and to save how much people that he can save. He decided to take some people. He took them out to Beersheba.
How? He had a car.
He had a
got away
private
from
car.
that. Tell us a little bit about how he managed to be in the position that he could save people.
First of all, he was a very smart person, because to think in that situation, it's very, very hard. And he did it real quick. He had a private car.
Okay.
5 places. He was alone in his car. And he opened the door of his car and he just grabbed people from outside in his car. And he saved them. Those people are my friends today. He saved them. He put them into Beersheba and he came back again after he saved those people.
After he already got to Beersheba with his car, he went back in?
This is almost an hour drive. People need to understand this is not to go 5 minutes and back. He had a whole hour back and forth to think what he's doing, to decide. He knew what he's doing. He knew what he's doing. And even those girls that he saved that morning to Beersheba, they told me, we tried to convince him, how can you go back? We almost died there just now. How can you go back? And try to convince him to stay in Beersheba. Of course, Ben said, don't worry, go inside. You're safe, you're good. I'm going back. I must go back. I need to save more people. Shut the door and drove. He was a race driver. So he raced all the way back to save more people, although he knew what's going on there. And that was Ben's morning. He went again and again inside and forth and again.
How many times did he do this?
We don't know the actual number. I think 3 times.
So based on, I just have information from a different perspective on the heroism of Ben Shimoni. And I mentioned to you when we saw each other and right before we came on set that I've been speaking and spending a lot of time with the Gonen family. And they have told me that he was there. He came out with 4 people, himself included, on the initial run, put them in Beersheba, and then he said, I'm going back. And no, you're not. Drove back in, found 5 random strangers, filled his car up, got them out, and he was in Beersheba. And then he got a call from Gaia, who was Romy.
She's talking about Romy. Romy, she is kidnapped today in Gaza, and Romy was in Ben's car. Ben tried to save her. But
what he did with them was they sent him a location of a bush, and they're on the phone with Romy's parents the whole time.
And he found them.
He found them. They're in the car, and then they were ambushed.
And those people, Gaia and Romy, Ben knew Gaia. He haven't knew Romy. He never met her before. He wanted to save as much people as he could. And when he got there, we found his phone. And his phone, when we looked in his messages, Gaia sent him the bush, the location. And very quickly, Gaia sent, don't come. Don't come. You won't survive. Don't come. Just go back home. That's okay. We will be okay. But Ben, obviously, he came back there and tried to save them. And he grabbed 3 of them.
There were 3. It was Gaia, Romy, and they picked up a stranger.
Ophir Tzarfati.
Yeah, Nahon. Yes.
And they were all ambushed in that glass car ride?
Yes. I was actually on this phone call. I was on the phone while he grabbed them, that group, to the car. And very quickly, the phone started with, hey, everything's okay. I just grabbed 3 of them. And I'm on my way back home. I'm coming with them. I will just grab one more friend on the way. I want to find him. It was the friend that he went with to the party. And I'm coming back. And I said, okay, great. I'm waiting for you. I haven't even finished my sentence. And I heard Ben saying, what is that? Terrorist? Something came in front of them and surprised him. That was the first moment that I heard Ben, and that morning, surprised. And very quickly I heard screaming. The 3 of them was in the car screaming. Girls, boys, Ophir, all of them were screaming in the car. Ben, drive drive, like save us. That what I heard, save us. And Ben, I didn't hear Ben anymore. I just heard the screaming, I heard shootings, and I heard suddenly quiet. So I understood something happened because Ben said, "What is it, terrorist?" And then I heard shootings.
What did you feel at that moment?
I was a half person like this in a minute. I knew something happened, but I wanted to think, to be still optimistic and to think he'll be okay. This is Ben. He's a superhero. He always was. He gets away from everything. So he will be okay. He's probably, I started to think maybe he hanged the phone on and he ran away and the phone is in the car and that's why he's not answering anymore. And that came to 5 days that we couldn't find Ben.
5 days.
5 days. No sleep, no eating. How can I do something when I don't know where's Ben? He went to a party. I heard that phone call. I need to save him. And you can't, the police didn't allow to go there. There were shootings for more than 6 days over there. So you can't even go, and even if you know his location, and I did knew his location because he texted me. And also I checked where his car was and the police, and the car stopped at the last location where our phone call.
So that's what they found him?
Ended. They found him near the car, not inside the car, and that we don't really know. We know the start. We know that he's a superhero, and we know the end. We don't know what really happened. We were waiting for Romy to come back. First of all, safe and healthy, and we're waiting for her for 3 months already. And also, we want to know what happened. She was the last person with him in the car. She heard probably me screaming on the phone, "Ben, Gaia, someone answer me." And that was the last, say. I'm waiting for Romy to come back and to tell us what happened there. I can only guess, and I want to believe that Ben hasn't suffered, and he went with a good feeling that, first of all, he heard my voice. I was with him on the phone, so
right to the end.
Right to the end, to the last moments. I always thought, like, what was his last thoughts? And I think he probably thought, Jessica's gonna kill me. That was his probably last thought.
But look how many lives he saved, and what a special person he was. What are you doing now? What do you occupy yourself with?
I'm a model, and I'm a law student. I haven't came back. This is not the same life that I had before the 7th of October. I'm actually still at the 7th of October. I might be sitting here and talking to you and trying. I'm trying. I'm mostly trying. But I feel like I'm in a horror movie, and I'm just waiting the movie to be, like, waiting for Ben to come from one of the doors and to get in. I'm mostly trying. Also, I'm a model, and as a model, it's a very hard thing to stand in front of a camera and to do this and
smile,
act like,
and pretend nothing happened.
To pretend I'm fine when I'm far, far, far from being fine. I'm trying. I want to believe he's with me.
He's with you. And there's only one way, and that is forward, and that is what we do as Jews and as Israelis. And we're really very privileged that you came here to share your story, and we wish you a lot of health. And please, God, we'll pray for all the hostages to come home and to tell the story of the heroism of your Ben. Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you.
Thank
you for having me.
And now, for our very popular segment, Scumbag of the Week. Emily.
So my scumbag this week is several Gaza photojournalists, if you can really call them that after what came out. I think it was Honest Reporting, a nonprofit media monitoring organization. They unveiled that some of the photojournalists paid by Reuters, paid by AP, are actually bragging about their involvement in the October 7th massacre. So we already know some of them were embedded with the Hamas terrorists. They took some of the photos. They were even paid for it. But now it's been unveiled that they were bragging about what actually happened there on their own social media. And one of them was laughing and celebrating when an IDF soldier was murdered and was dragged out of a tank, and he put it on his social media. There were other, I mean, just awful, awful scenes, hateful, awful scenes that prove that this wasn't just about journalism or documentation of what's happening. This was them taking part in the October 7th massacre, which of course is a total abuse of journalism. And this is coming at the same time we have people like Christiane Amanpour talking about how many journalists have been killed in Gaza. What is a journalist in Gaza? I really want to know, because there is no free press. So if you are actually approved to be sending out information about what's happening on the ground in Gaza, there's something wrong from the get-go. And we know that because other journalists, foreign journalists who were there in previous operations, were not allowed to report certain things because Hamas wouldn't allow them.
So what has been the response of the organizations that employed these people?
So far, pretty much nothing. A lot of them claimed they weren't paid, or they're freelancers, they're not really associated. But at the same time, they've been using this footage. I mean, Reuters used some of the footage from one of the terrorists, I will call him, because he's certainly not a journalist, who was laughing at an IDF soldier being killed and uploading it to his own social media.
And Reuters used this?
They didn't use that exact footage, but they used footage from him at the scene, and so did AP. I think this is an extreme violation of any principle of journalistic ethics.
So, Emily, your scumbag of the week, the photojournalists who were actively involved in the October the 7th massacre, and possibly subsequently as well.
Yeah. And then gloating.
And then gloating, celebrating. Vivian, who's your scumbag this week?
So I'm sticking with the same kind of unity thing. My scumbag.
Disunity thing.
Whatevs. My scumbag is a quad, come to think of it. It's a quad. And it is constituted by Miri Regev, Dudi Amsalem, Bezalel Smotrich, Itamar Ben-Gvir. Why? Because these four, they're really gutter politicians, and that's being charitable. They led the attack on Herzi Halevi, the IDF Chief of Staff, and Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant on Friday, as our Prime Minister and fearless leader, Mr. Security Benjamin Netanyahu, sat there with his arms crossed, sat back in his chair, and watched the show. So I just, like, zero integrity. You're taking such low orders and executing, and you, out of one side of your mouth, talk about unity and how the left is so bad and this and that. And here you are in the midst of a war attacking the men who have been leading honorably and do so every day. And you're humiliating them and then planning to leak the transcript of this out to the press. How dare you? How dare you sit in the Knesset? How dare you attack these men, unprecedented in Israel? And God knows we can go pretty low here when it comes to politics. And then Miri Regev actually had the chutzpah to go on TV on Saturday night and defend what she did as being honorable. So yeah, my scumbags.
I think that a lot of people feel that. I think that they crossed the line.
They did.
And even within, you know, the people that I know in the Likud, even within that, people feel a little sick that that happened. And so, yeah, a very different quad indeed. So my scumbag this week ties in a few of my previous scumbags that we've had over the last few months. And that is a man called Pierre Cranball, who was the chief executive of UNRWA, which is the UN body that is in charge of the Palestinian refugees. Of course, a refugee crisis that started 75 years ago and somehow has quintupled itself. Rather than, you know, doing anything for the refugees, integrating refugees, they've actually created a cult around refugees, and the number has gone from 750,000 to 5 million. That's UNRWA. UNRWA is the same body, of course, that teaches in Palestinian schools, or allows or funds teaching in Palestinian schools of complete anti-Semitic hatred, where Hamas have completely embedded themselves into all different UNRWA committees within Gaza and also in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank. And now this guy, who also went through some type of a sex scandal because he was sleeping with one of his staffers or his chief of staff.
He hired his mistress and his wife.
He hired his mistress and his wife, clever guy, and then went on these first-class trip holidays with his mistress on the bill of UNRWA. And, you know, UNRWA again did their own little internal investigation, nothing to see here. So guess who has hired this very savory character? A very savory organization called the International Committee of the Red Cross. Of course, because if you've proven yourself to be an anti-Semitic scumbag, another organization who loves anti-Semitic scumbags and represent them all has to hire you as the chief executive. What do we think about that, ladies? Pierre?
Not a surprise.
You know him, right, Vivian?
I did encounter him when I was serving as Canadian ambassador here, and Prime Minister Stephen Harper had canceled all UNRWA funding from Canada.
Hero, like Trump did. Like Trump did.
We really, that was a government principle. And so, you know, Kronbull didn't really like us very much. And I did have one, I encountered him several times, but I had one sort of set meeting in his office after we canceled the funds. And it was fiery. And he was very...
I wouldn't want to meet you on a dark alley. What happened?
Yeah, just a little kind of verbal knife fight.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish I would have been a fly on the wall.
Vivian is very good at those. I
Yes.
saw her dealing with some of the ambassadors, and I was like, wow.
But he, you know, he had it coming.
Of course he had it coming. And I
so-
don't understand how any organization, especially one that's trying to prove to the world, it's almost like
'Cause they
the
don't care.
check boxing.
Yeah.
Anything we can do to make people understand that we really are anti-Semites.
But hang on, there's just, while we're on their kind of National Enquirer story, because we get so few of these.
Yes.
Kronbull's mistress is also the daughter of a very influential Arab in,
Jordan? Is it Jordanian?
I can't remember who.
Right.
His wife or his mistress?
The mistress. The mistress.
So there
The
was
wife is
this
also-
kind of like, you're like having an affair with this guy's daughter. Like it got really complicated.
Oh,
Yeah, they within the
That's why he
UNRWA-
was run out of town.
Within UNRWA, people basically blew the whistle on him.
Yeah.
It wasn't any type of
was a nepotism
Zionist
also.
plot. It fell apart within his
But he's back
organization.
now.
Mismanagement, misuse of funds, and of course the Red Cross, nothing better for your CV.
Okay, but also we have to do this, right? Because we're like serious feminists. We do it. He's a man.
So
He
he
gets
can
away
get
with
away
it.
with it.
Yeah.
He can get away with
They
it.
pull the strings. They take care of their buddies. They're giving him a nice kind of, you know, a nice perch to ease out onto all of his big fat pensions in a few years.
Yeah, I don't think Claudine Gay would get that. Now, she deserved to be fired.
Oh, Claudine Gay
But-
did very well.
She did.
But yeah.
They gave her a nice package.
Oh, they gave her another job?
I don't know. I don't know the
They probably gave her a
details, but I
golden
can
parachute.
promise you.
She got a golden
find
parachute.
something else.
Because they
And
probably
a
made
big
her sign
bag
an
of cash.
NDA. You sign an NDA.
Yeah.
You don't talk about us. You don't, malign us.
Millions.
No.
Well,
Oh my
it's
God.
Harvard. They've got a multi-billion-dollar
You're right.
endowment.
We're in the wrong business.
You want to shut
ladies.
this down? Listen, this is just me kind of.
Sorry,
talking.
viewers, we're switching sides. We'll be joining Al Jazeera. I'm kidding.
Golden parachutes. Okay, so that's my scumbag of the week, Pierre Kronbull, and we invite you to come on the quad here so that Vivian can attack you again and we can tear strips out of you. So to end our wonderful episode of the quad, we always like to end on a positive note with heroes of the week. So Vivian, let's start with you. Bring us up. Elevate us with your hero.
Wow, that's a tough challenge. But I do think my heroes elevate all of us. And I'm back into that room on Friday with that horrible attack by the quad that were my scumbags on the IDF Chief of Staff, Herzi Halevi, and Yoav Gallant, Minister of Defense. And those two gentlemen are my heroes. And they are my heroes for a very simple reason. They come in, they do their jobs, they're honorable, they take responsibility, and they sat there and withstood this blistering gutter evisceration and demonization of their conduct when they have been performing in such a dignified way, and further took the attack with dignity. And I say, you know what?
These are the leaders we need.
These are the leaders we need. Those are the qualities and traits I want to see in a leader. Sitting there, composed, professional. Dignified. And Miri Regev, if you're watching, you could take some tips from them.
Okay, thank you for your heroes.
Just happy as I can get this
But
week.
the number one tip she should take is to resign.
Well, we've already had some people limiting their ministerships, and we may see more. But let's see. Watch this space. My hero of the week is an actor, ironically, one of the actors from Fauda, and a singer. And the reason that I actually know him personally is because he comes and does a lot of shows for the city of Jerusalem, many moments of celebration, and he's extremely friendly and accessible. Idana Mehdi, yesterday, got injured. Now, the man is an actor, he's a singer, he is successful. He probably wouldn't have had to go and fight. And yet he was the first one out there to fight with his troops, with his battalion. And yesterday he was very seriously injured. And to me, the fact that in this country, the army is such an important equalizer of society is really inspirational to me. And so we wish wonderful Idana Mehdi a refuah shlema, a speedy recovery. The whole country is behind you, and we want to see you singing again here in Jerusalem very soon.
Amen.
Emily.
So I will close out with a bit more heavy hero, but a hero nonetheless that I think needs heroes that need to be acknowledged. This week, yesterday was 94 days, so today would be day 95 of captivity for the women, many of whom are still teenagers, between 18 and 19 years old, who are being held in Gaza in Hamas captivity. There was a video that was taken in October, actually, that is sort of resurfacing now in some of the media because it's been over 3 months of 4 of the teenage girls who are being held in captivity. You can see all of their faces in the footage. All of them have blood on them. All of them look like they've been beaten. The hostages who have been returned have testified that they did encounter some of these girls and that every time the girls cried that they were sexually assaulted by the Hamas terrorists. There's been tremendous abuse, torture, psychological torture, physical beatings, all number of things that these girls have undergone. There are also some really horrendous rumors, both in Palestinian social media circles and Hebrew, but have not yet been confirmed, that some of the terrorists have been selling time to civilians in Gaza to spend with female hostages. Just absolutely horrific conditions. And so I want to make all of the women who are still in Gaza, but in particular these 4 teenage girls who are still in the Gaza Strip, and I want to say that we have not forgotten you, that you're in our hearts and minds, and that we will continue to speak about you and to raise awareness around the world. And a lot of people asked me this week, well, what can we actually do? And no, we can't storm into Gaza ourselves and liberate them, as nice as that would be. But I think that everyone who lives in a democratic country, who has a democratic leadership that they vote for, can call or email or message or tag on Twitter or anywhere to pressure their elected officials to put the immediate release of the hostages as the #1 agenda item before there is any discussion of ceasefire. All of our hostages that are still alive, and including the bodies that Hamas has been holding, need to come home now. Then we can discuss ceasefire. Then we can discuss the other options. But this absolutely should be non-negotiable, and every single leader of a democratic country should be aligned with that.
I'm so with you. I've been sick to my stomach since I saw that video. And I want to give a shout out to my friend Natalie Lisbona, who is the journalist who actually put that in the Daily Mail.
Yes.
With a headline, "Please don't forget them." And she's really done some fantastic covers for the UK media. And so I want to give her a shout out for reminding us about these girls. And as a mother of girls that age, I'm sick to my stomach. I'm sick to my stomach. So on that sad note, we pray that our collective prayers and wishes and the inspiration that we get from these women going through the unimaginable, that we have all our hostages home by the time next week's episode comes along. Please God, we pray.